For this special bonus episode of Press the Button, we go back in the silo. In marking this week's 75th anniversary of nuclear warfare attacks on Japan, our producer Derek Sender speaks with best-selling author Lesley M. Blume. Blume's new book, Fallout, The Hiroshima Cover-up and the Reporter Who Revealed It to the World, shows how an intrepid American reporter named John Hersey uncovered one of the deadliest cover-ups of the 20th century, the true effects of the atom bomb.
The White House has just made an important announcement on the war.
A short time ago, an American airplane dropped one bomb on Hiroshima.
Buzzing with the news of the atomic bomb.
We knew the world would not be the same.
We have now added a new and revolutionary increase in destruction.
Aren't sure yet what hit the place.
It killed between 100 and 150,000 people.
I'm Lesley Blume. I'm a journalist and a historian, New Yorker based in Los Angeles.
August 6, 1945. On that day, Hiroshima, Japan, became the site of the first use of a nuclear weapon in warfare. 3 days later, a second nuclear bomb was dropped on Nagasaki, Japan. While initial coverage of the story focused on the material destruction caused by the detonations, the human toll of nuclear warfare was not revealed to the general public until a year later, thanks to the dedicated efforts of an intrepid journalist named John Hersey. On this special edition of In the Silo, we explore the impact and importance of Hersey's story with Lesley Blume, award-winning journalist and author of the new book, Fallout, The Hiroshima Cover-up and the Reporter Who Revealed It to the World.
So I knew that I wanted to do a historical topic and find, the purest example demonstrating the power of investigative journalism to hold the powerful to account and to really act in the common good, especially in the face of a deadly existential threat. Hiroshima and Nagasaki were the sites of the first and only nuclear attacks in warfare.
A group of priests witnessed and survived the Hiroshima blast. One of them, Father John Zymus, tells what he actually saw, an eyewitness account.
I was in my room, and suddenly I saw a light, like magnesium light, flashlight, and turning from the window to the door of my room, I heard a crash, and immediately I was covered with splinters of the window frames and glass sticking into the walls and actually my flesh itself.
The site of the attacks, the devastation was just so total, and very little had been written about the initial reporters who had tried to get the stories out of Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
In May 1946, an American journalist, John Hersey, was asked by the New Yorker magazine to go to China and Japan and write a series of articles. Hiroshima was to be one of his subjects. Nearly a year after the bombing, he found the city devastated.
Very little had also been written about how John Hersey got his story out a year later, which was really the first story that showed the human toll of the atomic bombs.
The story he brought back so moved the editors of the New Yorker that although they had intended it to be a serial, they devoted an entire issue to it, adding only an introduction. They wanted to show clearly the human consequences of using such a terrible weapon.
It just seemed astonishing to me that a story that was so important, a story that not only did reveal that human toll and revealed the truth about nuclear aftermath, but also the fact that his reporting had revealed an enormous government cover-up trying to conceal those facts. How could this story not have been told before?
Talk about the color videotape of the atomic bombing that has rarely been shown, and yet it's been around, since right after the bombing.
Right. Almost all the images that people saw was black and white footage. Even to this day, not many people have seen much of the color footage, and that's because the U.S. suppressed that color footage shot by our own military for decades. And it really wasn't until the 1980s that any of it came out. Snippets have been used in film, so we see a little bit more of it now. But in this key moment in our nuclear history, as nuclear arms race continued for decades, Americans were not exposed to the full truth of the bomb.
That was author Greg Mitchell, speaking to Amy Goodman on Democracy Now! Back on the 66th anniversary of the bombings. As we reach the bombing's 75th anniversary this week, Blume sees a continued urgency for raising awareness about the threat of nuclear weapons.
It made me really see the sanctity of human life, and also as a journalist realize how deadly important it is to humanize in telling the narratives of catastrophe and disaster and warfare.
Today, this group of students from Princeton University is for the first time coming face to face with a Hiroshima survivor and the horrors she witnessed.
We're taught this narrative that, this great scientific instrument was dropped on Hiroshima. There was a flash and the war ended. But it's just been so surreal and I think in a lot of ways tragic to see that nightmare is being relived by people kind of every day and by the city every single day. So that really, really moved me, and I'm still grappling with that.
Today I was really taken aback, especially, just the very first image in the museum is the model of the people whose skin is dripping off, and I've never seen anything like that. And for me, it was really hard to see, honestly, being an American and knowing that this is something that happened.
Those were Princeton University students speaking to the BBC in 2015. Ensuring that future generations continue to keep the tragedies of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in their consciousness is in part what motivated Blume to write her book.
Human mind is just really not able to digest clinical casualty statistics or casualty projections. But when you tell the story of catastrophe or threat through the individual, it's amazing how much it penetrates the human consciousness and how much of a difference it can make. A lot of the revelations that people had at the time of entering the atomic age in 1945 and 1946, it's like every generation has to experience those revelations.
And so whilst the old remember the horror that was yesterday, the young live for today. But let mankind be careful, lest he bury the lesson of Hiroshima with the scars of the old.
Here's Hiroshima bombing survivor Setsuko Thurlow, who has dedicated her life to campaigning for nuclear disarmament.
In spite of pain, we are recalling our experiences and speaking out around the world because it's not the thing of the past. It has been going on the past, almost 70 years. The situation hasn't improved at all. It got worse and worse. At that time, only 2 bombs, which were used on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We thought it was a catastrophic situation.
Experts have been really sounding the alarm bells in recent months and recent years about how perilous the nuclear landscape has become again. It's been increasingly complicated to focus public attention on the immediacy of the threat.
Wake up. Citizens are asleep. The president is sound asleep. The Congress, for the most part, are sleepwalking with the rest of them. So the problem with this nuclear weapon is this is a machine to destroy human civilization and maybe all mammalian life.
When I first began researching fallout, it felt like more of a deep historical topic, and it really was all about reminding readers of the fact that we still have these mega arsenals with more than 13,000 warheads in the world. And, reminding us of the continued peril and not just the continued limping along peril, but the accelerating peril. We have withdrawals from nuclear treaties, probable accelerations of nuclear arsenals right now. We're slipping alarmingly back into a mindset where there's a kind of dehumanization again that would allow a preemptive nuclear attack to take place. So for me, fallout was an effort to, through Hersey's narrative, to remind people what's at stake and what they're actually talking about when they're endorsing the perpetration of a nuclear attack on a civilian population, and reminding them that this has to be one of the deciding factors when they are deciding their own leadership at the polls.
Fallout, the Hiroshima Cover-up, and the reporter who revealed it to the world was published today, August 4, by Simon & Schuster. For more information about Fallout and the work of Lesley M. Blume, visit lesleymmblume.com. LesleyMMBlume.com. This special segment of Press the Button was produced by Derek Zender.